Sana Malik was used to being alone. After her father's death, her mother moved to Islamabad to live with relatives, leaving Sana in Lahore to finish her art degree. She found a small, dimly lit one-bedroom apartment in an old building near her university. The walls were pale and cracked, the windows fogged in the winter chill. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Sana often visited flea markets, searching for objects to use as references for her art. That evening, the fog was thick, the street lamps' dim halos in the mist. She wandered into Anarkali Bazaar's oldest section, where vendors sat beside tattered rugs covered with antiques, brass oil lamps, chipped porcelain, tarnished mirrors. And then, she saw it. A small Labubu doll, unlike the cute cartoonish ones she'd seen online. This one was unsettling. Its fur was dark gray, uneven, almost damp-looking. The wide glass eyes caught the flickering bulb's light, reflecting it like an animal's in the dark. Its grin was too wide, showing tiny pointed teeth. The doll's ears were torn, and the left paw was stitched crudely, as though it had been ripped off and reattached. The vendor, a frail old woman wrapped in layers of wool, smiled with cracked lips. "You have good taste," she rasped. "This one is very old. Special." "How much?" Sana asked, almost without thinking. "For you? 500 rupees. Sana frowned. "That's too much for a broken toy." The woman leaned forward, her breath smelling faintly of mildew. "It's not broken. Just don't leave it alone in the dark." Sana thought she was trying to make the sale sound mysterious. She handed over the money, took the doll, and left, unaware that the woman never looked away until Sana vanished into the mist. That night, Sana placed the doll on her bedside table while unpacking some books. She felt silly. It was just a toy, but something about it made her avoid making direct eye contact for too long. At 11:45 p.m., the power flickered briefly. The heater clicked off for a moment, then back on. Sana, sketching at her desk, thought she saw the doll's head turn slightly toward her. She shook it off. By 3:07 a.m., she woke to a faint, slow scratching sound. Her phone's flashlight revealed the doll on the floor, in a kneeling position, head tilted up toward her bed. She remembered clearly placing it upright earlier. She placed it back on the table, went back to bed. The next morning, she opened her eyes to find the doll on her chest, staring directly into her face. Over the next week, strange things began happening. Her apartment keys appeared in different spots every day. The bathroom tap turned on at night. She heard faint giggling, like a child playing hide-and-seek when she was alone. One afternoon, her friend Hira visited. They were sipping tea when Hira noticed the doll. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice tense. "Some old woman in Anarkali," Sana replied. "Why?" Hira's eyes didn't leave the doll. "My cousin's friend had one exactly, like it. She swore it moved on its own. A month later, they found her unconscious. She never woke up." That night, Sana dreamt she was in her own apartment. But it was wrong. The walls dripped with water. The doll sat in the corner, whispering in a language she didn't understand. She woke to find her pillow damp. The window was shut. 2 nights later, she returned from class to find her apartment door slightly open. She froze in the hallway, listening. Inside was silent. When she stepped in, she noticed one thing out of place. The Labubu doll was sitting in the kitchen, facing the stove, as if watching it. The landline rang. She didn't even know it worked. An unknown number. When she picked up, a child's voice whispered, "Why did you move me?" She dropped the phone. From then on, she began locking the doll in a cupboard before sleeping. Yet each morning, it would be back on the bedside table, its grin somehow wider. One evening, she filmed herself sleeping, just to prove to herself it was all in her head. The next day, she checked the footage. At 3:07 a.m., the cupboard door opened slowly. No one visible. The doll climbed down, one jerky movement at a time, its head twitching unnaturally, and walked toward her bed. The screen went black. Sana could not shake the image she had seen on her phone screen. The the footage of the cupboard door slowly creaking open, and the Labubu doll crawling out in awkward, twitching movements toward her sleeping form before the recording cut to black. The sight left a knot in her stomach that wouldn't loosen. She didn't care how ridiculous it seemed. She had to get the thing out of her apartment. She wrapped the doll in layers of cloth until it was just a lump in her hands, shoved it into a shoebox, taped the lid shut several times, and left it near the door. The urge to run it straight to the dumpster was strong, but the night air was cold and the fog outside thick enough to swallow the streets. She decided she would take it back to the old woman at Anarkali Bazaar first thing in the morning. The next day, she made her way to the corner of the bazaar where she'd first seen the stall. The place was busy, filled with the familiar shouts of sellers and clatter of metal trays, but the patch where the old woman's rug had been was empty. She asked a few shopkeepers about her, but each one shook their head. No one had seen such a woman in years, they told her, some insisting there had never been one there at all. The air felt heavier with each answer. She turned to leave, clutching the box tight against her chest. On the way back, she chose a narrow alley to avoid the crush of people. The fog here was thicker, curling around the dim yellow lamps, muffling the sound of her own steps. Ahead of her, a man in a long coat walked slowly, his head turning slightly as though listening for something. Without warning, his pace slowed even more, and he spoke without looking back, his voice flat and cold, saying only that she had bought it, and that it could not be returned because it came to stay. Her mouth went dry, and she asked what it was, but the man did not answer. He turned a corner, and when she followed, the alley was empty. She reached her apartment before dark. The box stayed near the front door, untouched. She locked her bedroom and sat on the bed with her phone in hand, telling herself she would throw the box into the garbage chute before the sun rose. Outside, the wind whistled through unseen cracks in the old building. At some point, she must have dozed off because she woke to a faint thud from the living room. Her first thought was that something had fallen over, but then came another thud, and a dragging sound, slow and deliberate. Her stomach tightened as the sound of tearing tape reached her ears. She sat frozen on the bed, staring at the door. The dragging grew louder, then stopped. The door handle rattled once, twice, and then soft scratching began, long and slow, like nails against wood. Her phone screen flickered and went black for a moment, before filling with an image, the Labubu doll's face grinning, eyes blinking as though it could see her. The scratching stopped, replaced by a silence so deep she could hear the pounding of her own heart. Then came the sound of breathing, just on the other side of the door. A small shadow moved under the gap, the shape of a furry paw twitching once before disappearing. The lights went out without warning. In the sudden darkness, the cold was sharp enough to sting her skin. She turned on the flashlight and the beam caught a wet handprint on the inside of the bedroom window, 4 floors above the ground. Her phone vibrated in her hand. A single text appeared from an unknown number telling her not to look behind her. She felt the pull of dread down her spine, but she turned anyway. In the far corner of the room, the doll was standing upright. It was no longer small enough to fit in her hands. It was the size of a child now, its limbs too long, its fur matted with something dark and sticky. The glass eyes were gone, replaced by black wet hollows that reflected the beam of her flashlight. Its mouth stretched into a grin far too wide for its face. It took a step toward her, jerking unnaturally, then another, the sound of its movements like bones bending in the wrong direction. Her breath came in clouds in the freezing air. The smell of damp earth filled the room. She grabbed the heavy lamp from the table and hurled it. The lamp smashed against the wall behind the figure, passing through it as though hitting mist, but the doll kept coming, head twitching violently. The whispering began, low and layered, dozens of voices speaking over one another, children laughing, others crying, some screaming words she could not understand. The room darkened further as water began to drip from the ceiling and slide down the walls, pooling at her feet. She felt her legs grow heavy, as if the air itself had thickened and locked her in place. The figure stopped just in front of her. Its mouth opened slowly, then wider, then impossibly wide, until the jaw seemed to unhinge, and something black began spilling out, a flood of moving shadow that rushed toward her. She tried to scream, but the air was too heavy to let the sound out. The cold swallowed her whole. The next morning, Hira knocked on the apartment door again and again. It was unlocked, swinging open with a faint creak. Inside, the air was damp, and the smell of stagnant water lingered. The walls were wet to the touch. There was no sign of Sana. The only thing on the bed was the Labubu doll, its glass eyes back in place, its stitched grin wide and unmoving. In its small paw was a single lock of human hair. As Hira turned to leave, a faint, high-pitched voice floated from the darkened room behind her, soft and almost playful, asking not to be left alone in the dark.